bring in Paul Finebaum, ESPN SEC Network, host of the Paul Finebaum Radio Network. Show can be watched live, internet stream at myfoxfinebaum.com. Paul, what did you make of Steve Spurrier's comments?
Let me get the obvious out of the way, Chris. I mean, I've been a fan and friend of Steve's for more than 25 years, but having said that, I was embarrassed for him. He came off like the crazy uncle in the attic, as you said. There was no explanation. There was no reason. He had been in Birmingham last Monday, a week ago, talking about this. He addressed it in an eloquent way. He compared himself to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, being the same age, and mentioned Mike Krzyzewski. He went through the Bristol car wash on Tuesday, said the same thing, and for whatever reason, I think he saw this item in the local paper, the column by Mark Bradley, and I think he blew a gasket. And, Steve Spurrier doesn't need to remind you or me or anyone else of his resume. He's one of the greatest coaches in college football history.
Yeah, there was a level of paranoia there that maybe I'm not used to seeing from Steve Spurrier. It seemed like, Paul, he created the story. I mean, we wouldn't be talking about this if Steve Spurrier didn't bring it up.
No, I mean, that's correct. And, I think he called in a couple of local writers and read them the riot act, that's okay. I mean, that coaches do that all the time, from Nick Saban on down. But he turned a dead story into a two-day story that ran all day, all night on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we're talking about it, Wednesday, Thursday, and we're talking about it again today. And he really has made his age an issue. And guess what? He's not as good a coach, and he's not at the same type of program that he used to be. South Carolina had 3 good seasons. They were 11-2, but the previous 5 or 6, they were 7-6, which they were last year. That's more the norm than the exception. And I think he set himself up that if he loses the opener in 6 weeks against North Carolina, which is possible, we're going to hear all of this again, and he'll become more defensive, more thin-skinned, and quite frankly, more mean-spirited. Because in this day and age, in the year 2015, first of all, to even acknowledge that a newspaper has any influence whatsoever, and I come from that background, and you do, is preposterous. But to call someone from an Atlanta newspaper that covers professional sports mainly, college sports secondarily, an enemy, it reeks of Richard Nixon in 1973.
Yeah, and talent wins in college football. You can't argue with Steve Spurrier's recruiting classes the last 2 years. They just haven't been very good. I mean, what's going on with him on the recruiting trail? Why are recruits sort of turning away more from South Carolina than in the past?
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, he has Clemson in the same state, which is one of the better recruiting schools in this part of the country, and he has Georgia. He's in Tennessee is on the rise, which I think is affecting him. He was also able to get a lot of really good talent from in-state. Jadeveon Clowney from Rock Hill, South Carolina, Marcus Lattimore. Those kind of players don't come around every year. But what happened last year was perplexing. I mean, he was a top 10 preseason pick. He got shattered in the opener at home against Texas A&M. He blew 3 fourth-quarter double-digit leads against Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky of all schools, and that's where his season went. But the game that really got him was Clemson. He had beaten Clemson 5 straight years. He always runs his mouth about Dabo Swinney, and when that happened, Steve Spurrier seriously considered retiring. He told friends that. It's been reported in myriad publications. And then he changed his mind. He made a flippant statement, I'll be around for 2 more years, when everyone realized that will hurt him in recruiting. He walked that back. And since then, it has been a train wreck for him, at least from a public relations standpoint.
He's Paul Finebaum, ESPN SEC Network, Sirius XM Radio. Do you enjoy these SEC media days?
Absolutely. I actually hate them because you really, I mean, it's a little better than it used to be when I was on Radio Row schlepping around trying to grab a coach. With ESPN, we have a few more perks, but basically nothing is said. Spurrier, frankly, and Saban were the biggest stories of last week. Spurrier on retirement, Saban on what was perceived as making excuses for losing to Ohio State. Other than that, it's much ado about nothing.
Who's the most sensitive fan base in college football?
I would say Ohio State right now, in spite of everything. They should be on top of the world. They should be enjoying the fruits of Urban Meyer's victory, but they react so much. They have waged this war against the SEC as if one national championship means everything. The SEC did win 7 in a row, and I realize things have changed, and they're continuing to change, but I've never heard I haven't heard any joy out of Ohio State since they won the national championship. Instead, all I've heard is backbiting.
What is it with all the whining, Paul, from these SEC coaches? All I'm hearing about in the last 6 months are satellite camps and our schedules are too tough. I mean, is it more whiny than usual?
Much more, Chris, and I think there's a bit of entitlement that comes with being an SEC coach, and they got used to being on top of the mountain, and last year they were knocked off by Florida State, this year by Ohio State, and they have gone into the excuse machine. I was shocked by what Saban said last week, that the NFL draft deadline may have affected his team. He talked about players running out of bounds against Ohio State. It's the biggest game of the year in college football, and if he can't get them ready to play, then that's on him. And then Gus Malzahn talking about the gauntlet of the SEC. Well, it is tough. I mean, everyone knows that. But the week before the Alabama game, he plays Idaho. It's not like he's going to Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge.
Is this a good year for the SEC?
I think it is, but again, I don't want to sound like one of those SEC whiner coaches, but it is so difficult that I don't see an SEC team going undefeated. And frankly, I think the challenge is to only have one loss, because if an SEC team has more than one loss, it's very likely they will not get in the college football playoff.
What'd you make of this Ohio State quarterback story? Braxton Miller switching positions, going to be a wide receiver for the Buckeyes next season. Good move for Braxton Miller?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is for him, and I'll rely more on what NFL draft experts tell me and everyone else. But Braxton Miller is not an NFL quarterback. By playing this hybrid position, he gives himself a chance to improve his stock. And besides, he was going to be the third-string quarterback in spite of being the Big Ten Player of the Year twice.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. If he's staying at Ohio State, he should maybe try a different position. My question was, if you knew you were going to be the third-string quarterback, or you felt that way, and you still felt you could be a quarterback at the highest level, a lot of schools would have jumped at Braxton Miller, right?
Well, yeah, LSU and Alabama were desperate to get him. Alabama had been in touch with him for as long as possible, and at one point there was a feeling in Tuscaloosa he was going to come there. I'm not really sure what changed. I think the injury has been a little slower to heal than he anticipated. So I really think he just thought he would walk in, much like Jacob Coker last year. Remember, he was the backup for Jameis Winston. He went to Alabama and really never came near being the starter.
All right, if Braxton Miller's out of the mix, who wins that quarterback competition, Ohio State?
I think it's J.T. Barrett. In spite of everything about Cardell Jones, and I've never seen a quarterback come out of nowhere and do what he did. But I think J.T. is going to be the starter, and they're in a better position today than they were yesterday, because they don't have a three-horse race. They have two great quarterbacks, and if something goes wrong, there's Braxton Miller running routes, coming over to play the quarterback position.
And that's what's interesting to me, Paul, because I think Urban Meyer is going to use Braxton Miller in some really unique ways. I think you'll see Braxton Miller under center in a lot of situations next year.
Yeah, I think so too. And to me, Ohio State is clearly the best team in the country. They have everything going for it. The schedule is ridiculously easy, but what they have to deal with is the same thing that Florida State dealt with last year and Alabama the year before. It's the suffocating pressure of being hunted, and we saw it. We've seen it over and over again, and sometimes it just becomes too much. Michigan State is really about the only team on the schedule, I think, that has a shot at them. Whether that happens or not, I don't know, but I do think the pressure could be too much for Ohio State to repeat.
Good to visit with you, Paul. Appreciate the time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
That's Paul Finebaum, ESPN SEC Network, joining us here on the Dan Patrick Show.